Hello, uh, Dr. Ruhrold here. Um, I was asked to do a brief message for staff by members of the center's clinical excellence team. So that's what this is. Let me tell you a little bit about that team, first of all. I wanted to start by just mentioning the members. If anybody's curious, this is just alphabetical by first name. So these are folks across the center who, for going on 2 years now, have been working to study what we know about therapy, therapy outcomes, what works best, how can we most effectively help people. If you're curious why now, I suppose this group is something we should have had in place all along, but it's a response to our profession being held more and more accountable for outcomes. That word can be a little scary, but it really needn't be. Outcomes are something we deal with every day as consumers. I mean, when I buy a service, I expect some results. If I take my car in for service, I expect there to be some improvement when I drive it out the door. And we're expected to produce results too by the people who pay us, because healthcare dollars are getting thinner and thinner all the time. But the real answer to the question why, in my mind, is that we really ought to be proliferating across the center those approaches to care that are most likely to help the most people. That's the why. That's why I got into this business, and I'm sure it's why you did. So that group has been meeting for going on 2 years, and just to quickly acknowledge some of the people who participated in that, Connie Harmon, Dan Carey, Haley Carpenter, Katrina Ott, Ken Shields, Kevin Brown, Lindy Leary, Matthew Graham, Megan Plank, Dr. Megan Colley, Melanie Staus, Robin Mitchell, Dr. Sequilla Liebetrau, Susan Miller, Tess Ottenweller, Tony Harmon, Vicki Lay, and Dr. Wendy Melanson. We've also had other people join us, like Nicole Cavanaugh, who's provided us some really valuable assistance with logistics and support, so I want to thank everybody who's been involved in that. So we've been meeting on a regular basis, studying what constitutes clinical excellence and the best approaches to treatment, based not on our opinions and feelings, but based on research. We've made a decision to affiliate with an organization that everybody hearing this ought to know about. It's called the International Center for Clinical Excellence. You can Google it. The International Center is the largest online community of therapists, mental health professionals in the world. It's really a pretty cool organization because if you register, which is free, you won't be bombarded with a bunch of emails and ads, but you will get some real interesting materials about therapy and therapy practice, burnout, all sorts of things that are relevant to us day to day. So we've affiliated with that organization. The founder and director of that organization is a Dr. Scott Miller, who, along with a large network of professionals, look at these key issues of outcomes and what constitutes excellence. So the team has put together this, what we call our Outpatient Provider Toolkit. And what's in here are some goodies that we hope will help our clinicians thrive and feel better and better about the work we do as we work together to be the most effective we can be at helping people. I'm going to talk about what's in here briefly in a moment, but let me put it in a little bit of context. did a series of workshops last year that many of you attended where we talked about treatment models and outcomes. But I want to give you an update on some information. It's all based on the studying that this group I mentioned has been doing. We have nothing to apologize for. The outcomes that mental health professionals have working in real-life local clinics are good. They're comparable to a lot of medical procedures we're all familiar with. Do you realize that the effect that psychotherapy has is 5 times greater than the effect that fluoride has on preventing cavities? The effect of mental health therapy is equivalent to the therapeutic effects of cardiac bypass surgery and angioplasty. And what's even better is that what you and I do rarely, if ever, kills people. Whereas serious side effects of those procedures are not uncommon. With us, it's news. With those professional groups, it's a calculated risk. So our outcomes are really good with the people who stay. One of the problems we have is nationwide, the dropout rate in therapy is about 47%, essentially half. And what that means is, to be a little more specific, is 40 years of research indicates that half of the people drop out of therapy before they've achieved any measurable improvement. That's a problem from the point of view of those who watch what we do and pay for services. Our outcomes are good, but another problem is they really haven't improved much in 40 years since the first major meta-analysis, which is a study of studies, was published back in 1975. Also, most of us don't improve that much in terms of the results we produce, the outcomes, the benefit that our clients achieve from the time of very early in our career to later in our career. We tend to plateau really early unless we do certain things to jumpstart our practice. We also know that burnout rates tend to be pretty high. So this tool and all the other things we've been talking about is intended to help re-energize us. And I'm telling you sincerely, from my personal experience, I make it a practice not to ask anybody who's watching this video to do anything I wouldn't do myself. So in my clinical practice, which is primarily in Fort Wayne, I've been incorporating all these tools over the last year or more, as have all the members of your local representatives for the excellence team, as well as others. And I just hear time and time again how it's improved our outcomes, reduced our dropout rates, and re-energized and inspired therapists without really doing any extra work, just doing some things a bit differently. I think that's a good thing to consider. So it's in that spirit that we're offering this to people. So frankly, my hope is, my plea is, that as local teams, we use this and the other information your local team representatives can share actively. I would jump for joy if I came to your office and saw a lot of these sitting on people's desks with a lot of dog ears and torn pages that needed to be replaced. I'm urging you, resist the temptation just to stick this on the shelf and let it collect dust. Because I'm speaking from personal experience, utilizing some of these concepts has given me some new life and energy, and I think the people whose names I mentioned, some of whom are sitting around your table right now as you're listening to this, could say the very same thing. So I just want to take a moment to go through the content and talk about what we've got here. One of the things in here is a studio video that's the content of the workshop I did back in 2014. So for those of you who'd like to revisit that information, or who weren't able to hear it, or who are new to the center, there's the workshop. It takes about 3.5 hours, and you can get CEUs for it through our training department. It's shorter than the actual workshop itself, that when we did live, of course, because there's not questions and answers and breaks and stuff. And this was actually done in a studio. So I think it's pretty cool. If you open your kit, you'll see there's a table of contents. You've got in section 1, you've got some of the core concepts of deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is a concept where we're thoughtful, planful, strength-based in our approach. I don't have time to go through it here, but look at section 1 and review those principles. They're discussed in detail in the workshop. Then you've got the presentation slides from the workshop. The next section is the most recent description of evidence-based practices. The most effective clinicians are masters of a few evidence-based practices. They don't necessarily know 50, but the real key is to learn a few that you're passionate about, dive deep into those, gain mastery, and use those in a disciplined and planful way. So these are some of the evidence-based practices we particularly support at the center. At the end of that section, there's a spreadsheet that's intended to kind of connect different practices to different populations. So it kind of says what those approaches are, who those approaches are best for. Section 4 is a checklist and a description of how deliberate, planful practice tends to play out in a typical case with a length of stay of a dozen outpatient sessions. Some people like to have kind of a checklist and a structure. The team suggested we put that together, so that please take a look at that. You probably recognize this yellow card. It's the guide to orienting clients to care. Evidence-based practices are important, but when it comes to outcomes, the relationship between the provider and the client is 5 times more important than the technique. And we know one of the key things in building a healthy alliance is good orientation to care and developing collaborative goals, collaborative plans, and honoring some of the client's preferences for care. You might want to discuss those issues. That's how you build a reliably strong alliance. This card gives you a guide for how to orient people to care, which is a critical step in building the therapeutic alliance. We give the next section, section 6, we give a description of some of the outcome measures available in Avatar. And if you go a little further, there are some example questionnaires for the ACORN system, which is an online outcome measurement system that we're implementing. We've also included some tools you can hand to clients to help them respond to some of these outcome measures. I'll leave that to your local team representatives to talk about in more detail. I want to talk a little bit about outcome measurement. The most effective therapists, like we said, use evidence-based practices, a few evidence-based practices, ones they are passionate about and master, and they use them in a deliberate, planful way. The most effective therapists build consistently strong alliances with clients and families. The most effective therapists measure 2 key things: the client's global distress and the client's perception of the treatment alliance. They don't guess at those things. Because from the workshop content and some other research I could share with you, it's very clear that we therapists are not good at intuiting those things. Understanding global distress as a measure of progress and the strength of the treatment alliance is drop-dead critical to people staying in therapy and making progress. But we can't guess at it. It just doesn't work. Let me give you a quick example. There was a study published not too long ago of 50 clinicians serving, 25 clinicians serving 20 clients each for a total of 500 clients for a period of 6 months, okay? And the researchers simply asked the therapist at the end of the study to identify which clients got worse. Now we know in general, when it comes to therapy, 80% of people who stick with it make progress, about 10% make no progress, about 10% deteriorate. So the researchers even gave them a clue. They said of the clients you're serving, of the 20 clients these 25 clinicians were serving, they could expect that 2 or 3 of them would decline in functioning by the end of the study. So all they had to do was look at the clients they were serving and put like a check mark next to the ones that they thought got worse. The researchers actually measured progress and then compared it to the clinicians' predictions. Out of the sample of 500 clients, 40 deteriorated, which is actually 8%, a little better than the usual number. Of the 40 clients who actually got worse during the study, the clinicians successfully identified one out of 40. We're not good at intuiting these things. Dr. David Burns' research that I talk about in the workshop says the same thing. So I'm encouraging people to if you're not already doing it, start to incorporate some of the outcome measures we've provided. The PHQ-9, the GAD-7, those measure global distress. The session rating scale measures alliance. It's not a coincidence that those things were built into Avatar. They measure the two things that are most critical to outcomes. We're introducing the ACORN system, which is an online way of measuring the same things using a single questionnaire. Some of our offices are already using it 100% among their outpatient staff. In all of our locations, we've got some staff working with it. We'd like to get that introduced even more broadly. So thanks for listening. Please spend some time looking at the toolkit with your local representatives and directors. Talk about how you might use it. If you have questions about deliberate planful practice, the use of outcome measures, let me know. But it's been exciting to me to do this stuff. I don't think it's not any more difficult than what we do already. And I just actually got an article from the International Center in my mailbox today, which talks about how people who practice this way have been shown to have substantially lower burnout rates because they have better results. They get 50% better outcomes, and they reduce their dropout rates by half. And that's pretty exciting, because I got into this business to help people, as did you. And probably the best way to energize us and protect us from getting cynical and burned out is to grow in our ability to make a difference. God bless, and thanks for listening.